Hello, everybody, and welcome to Forever Motorsports on Forever Sports. I'm coming to you live from Durban today. This is Reese's residence that I'm at, not in Joburg at the moment, down here in Durban. And of course, this week we have the Baku Grand Prix. It's been so long since we've had a Grand Prix. It feels like ages, absolutely ages. But of course, we've got Baku this weekend and all the news to go with it. That, of course, the title of the show, that Alonso, is he dating Taylor Swift? That's the big clickbaity title we've got for all of you. Alonso, is he dating Taylor Swift? Reese, do you have more?
Short and sweet answer, no. There's obviously people love to create drama. Fernando Alonso has also poked fun at it, making a TikTok of himself with some Taylor Swift music in the background. Obviously, I don't think he's dating Taylor Swift. He is a Formula One driver who is so busy. Taylor Swift also being extremely busy on her world tour at the moment. So I certainly don't believe those two are dating.
The fans, they're all saying that they're dating. They must be dating. That has to be the power couple. Right?
No.
I mean, I think there's quite a bit of an age gap, but anyway.
Yes, slight.
It is quite an interesting concept, though, to think about. Fernando Alonso, he is dating mega music icon Taylor Swift. No, he's not, in fact. But nonetheless, a great piece of some jokes there. And Fernando Alonso at least playing along and enjoying that as well with some of the fans as well. But more to the point, we turn our attention to this weekend, Baku, of course. And there's lots that could happen this weekend. Apparently, big changes for Ferrari and Mercedes going into the week. Are we going to see them?
Well, we have been teased a lot over this winter break. I go straight back to the off season. No, straight after this, about a month hiatus in between the last race and Baku. We certainly are expecting Mercedes to bring some major upgrades, possibly finally getting rid of that zero side pod philosophy, finally bringing some side pods onto the Mercedes car. Will we be seeing it? What do you think? I don't know. I mean, they've teased it so many times and then just come back with their normal zero side pod design.
Yeah, I mean, they keep talking about having to go to the different design, and they keep saying, oh no, the current design is not working yet. They haven't really changed all that much from the car yet. In the first 3 races we've had so far, we've not seen too much of a drastic change, and yet we have seen a change in their timings. They have slowly but surely, well, I say slowly, to be fair, actually a lot more rapid than they said they were going to change, but it's sped up quite significantly. So
well, what we've seen now, though, over this break is that James Allison has once again become the chief technical director of Mercedes. He did have that role in July 2021 and then rejoined the team this year. So he is once again chief technical officer. So we will have to see if he is able to bring the Mercedes back up to their fighting form as they were in 2021.
Yeah, Mercedes still lots of work to do, but again, they're seemingly improving every Grand Prix and getting a little bit closer to that to those podium places. And of course, they took podium places very well in it was Melbourne, wasn't it? They got second and third. No, not second and third.
No.
They got third and fourth or fourth and fifth. Yeah. It's third and fourth because they thought it was. That was the whole thing with Alonso, and then they reinstated that. But nonetheless, improving their points and certainly moving up quite quickly. So nobody's really challenging Red Bull yet. We know that much. But hopefully we'll see a second place battle start to brew a bit more between Ferrari, Mercedes, and Aston Martin, of course. And we talk now to Ferrari. I mean, Ferrari still really started the season rather poorly. Is it going to change this weekend?
I certainly think they've started the season on the back foot. I mean, they really haven't been able to match the pace of Ferrari, of Red Bull, Mercedes, as well as Aston Martin. I mean, they were one of the title contenders, favourites going into this year. We certainly expected them to be able to possibly over-dominate Red Bull, but clearly just not being able to have that pace out on track.
No, not at all. I'd say Ferrari last season showed glimpses of what they could do, but this season just really struggling to get going. But
it seems like they are struggling a lot with their tyre degradation, something they also had issues with last year. They seemingly didn't have as much of an issue as this year, but this year just rarely. They have that qualifying pace over one lap, but over a race they just completely eat their tyres. Maybe they're setup is just a little bit too aggressive for now.
And also, not just that, but we spoke most of last season about the fact that Ferrari had such big issues with regards to mistakes, big mistakes that make stupid, easy, disciplined things. And yet that seems that everyone thought, oh no, that'll change with the new team principle, and that'll change with the whole approach to the season, because we thought, no, we've got to get it all right, we've got to get things going. And yet,
I think something new fans have to remember is changes do not happen overnight in Formula One. Changes happen over seasons, sometimes multiple seasons. I mean, look at Williams. They're finally starting to bring themselves back up the grid. But at what cost? It's taken them over 10 years.
But I mean, are we really going to compare Ferrari to Williams? I mean,
Well-
it's Ferrari. How long can you wait for that change to come? Because the problem is, we say the change to come. Ferrari haven't been near the top for many years.
Technically last year was their first championship fight yet again, but their last real championship fight was with Sebastian Vettel fighting with the likes of Lewis Hamilton. I mean, it's been a long time since Ferrari have been competitive. We got very excited as fans last year to see Ferrari being very competitive, but then just being let down once again this year. Very sad not to have those Ferraris fighting out for podiums and race wins.
Yeah, so of course we look to the weekend to see whether or not Ferrari and Mercedes have managed to put some decent upgrades in this break. Of course, drivers have been getting up to lots of fun things during their holidays all over the world, but I'm sure the mechanics back at base have been working as hard as possible on getting those cars up to scratch and getting them race ready for Baku in Azerbaijan. And I think we move on from there just
chatting about Baku and this race weekend. There's a lot of controversy going into this race weekend. The FIA and Formula One group have decided that this race weekend will have the first sprint of the 2023 season. A lot of teams not so happy though about this. Azerbaijan being such a difficult track, a very treacherous track that we've seen in the past, always having a safety car, often having a red flag, especially going into that castle section. It is so tight, only one car can fit through there at a time. If someone makes a mistake, the entire grid will have to wait for that car to be cleared before they can proceed through that section.
And it's not even just a red flag, it's borderline, black flag. It's on the track.
Oh, black flag is disqualification.
I realise that, but I'm just saying it's to the point where you've got whatever the worst possible thing you could think of, that's what it's going to be. Because if you manage to have... No, I'm just saying, if you manage to have a car crash in that castle section, it's just in that corner there, not only is that car stuck, every car can't get past, they can't even make it back to the pits. Obviously a red flag, you need to make your way back to the pits ASAP and go to the garage. They can't even do that, so they just have to stop on track. Cold tires, they can't see the car, they've got to wait ages. I mean, that's a seriously big issue if that should happen.
Well, I think that aside, what the biggest issue is, the reason why teams are not happy this weekend is because it increases their risks of having to rebuild a car, of having a big shunt, of losing out on points. Azerbaijan, it's once again, we are going into such a busy season now. Well, busy part of the season. We go straight into Imola, then we go into Miami, on and on and on. You do not have the funds all the time to be rebuilding a car from scratch if you have a big shunt.
Exactly. And speaking of funds, Formula One, they say, there's an article here I've got saying, they're on a slippery slope when it comes to teams continuing to breach that $135 million budget cap. And of course it sounds like it's a big budget cap, but for most of these teams, they all say it's nothing.
I mean, compared to what they used to have in the past, where they were pretty much using unlimited funds, they used to have a race car per driver as well as a spare car. If they crash the car, they'll come back into the pits, get into a new car and get back out on track.
I feel like what the budget cap should do, and we talk about the budget cap, I'll go back to the article as well, but the budget cap should be changeable. Shouldn't be a set in stone thing. It should be, based on...
flexible based on the amount of races, the amount of sprint races, as well as it has to take into account inflation, because that's been a big talking point between the team bosses. Speaking of team bosses, though, going back on the cost cap, Red Bull's Christian Horner believes around about 6 teams have already breached the cost cap for last year.
Yeah, and so I just want to read the article and just go over. So the main points from the article here goes and says Formula One had a $140 million budget cap in 2022, but it is feared some teams could have exceeded it. Red Bull exceeded the 2021 budget and was subsequently fined for it. F1 teams will have a capped budget of $135 million onwards. So not only have of all these teams complaining about the fact that the budget cap is so limiting, they decreased it from 2021 to 2022. It was a smaller budget cap. So, it's scary, the sort of things that you could see. As I say, 6 potential teams breaching that at least. And I just want to read a bit of the article. It says, Formula One introduced a budget cap at the start of the 2021 season. It was done after many years of trying and figuring out how to curb wasteful expenditure. Teams like Ferrari, Red Bull, and Mercedes-AMG had seemingly bottomless pits of money to throw at car development, forever growing the performance gap between them and the rest of the grid. This costly nature prevented many new teams from entering the sport too, with Haas the last to do so in 2016. But things changed significantly in 2021 with the introduction of a $145 million budget cap, decreasing to $140 million last year and $135 million from this year onwards, so decreasing, which is very interesting. However, it remains challenging for some teams to stick to it, as proved by Red Bull Racing's overspending in 2021.
It's fine, it was only catering.
It was only the catering budget. Following the announcement of the 2021 budgets in 2022, Red Bull team boss Christian Horner warned that teams could be found guilty this year for breaching last year's budget. And he said, I think that we have set, what we have set is a precedent, and it sets a precedent for 2022. And a danger for 2022 is that there could be 6 teams in breach of the cap. Energy prices have been exponential, but thankfully we've been protected from that. But there is a chance that several teams, many of which have stated that during F1 Commission meetings, will break the cap. Red Bull exceeded the 2021 budget by 1.6%, resulting in a $7 million fine and a 10% reduction in wind tunnel time for 2023.
I think what it's showing is that the fact that the teams are willing to take those penalties in order to be able to spend that much more money, it gives them much more performance out on track, as we've possibly seen with Red Bull. I mean, their 2021 overspend possibly allowed them to design their 2022 car to the spec that it is. I mean...
And you think maybe the same for Aston Martin? Maybe Aston Martin overspent last year for this season.
We'll have to see in the next coming months. I mean, we should be getting that information from the FIA hopefully soon. I mean, it would be very interesting. A very big talking point for sure going into the season.
Yeah, and it says, and the boss is nervous, as this is the Red Bull boss. It says, hitting the ground running in 2023, it's only reaffirmed many insiders' belief that the inflicted penalty was not harsh enough. It's a feeling shared by Horner. It says teams can thus overspend by 5% in a year to gain an advantage for the next and take a small hit in the year after that. Red Bull's early season success now could be interpreted as a direct result of the 2021 overspend, even if the $2.2 million overspend was attributed to non-car related expenses.
Well, I think if we do see so many teams overspending, they are going to make the penalties even harsher. I think they would have to. I mean, you'll have to set even more of a precedent. They said they set a precedent with Red Bull. Clearly, it wasn't enough. If we have 6 teams once again breaching,
potentially
breaching. I mean, if we do get that many teams, it will be quite shocking. I'm sure they'll have some creative accounting going on before, but if we do have as many as 6 teams breaching that cost cap, we will need some very, very serious repercussions.
And Stefano Domenicali, of course, the new CEO of F1, had this to say on it, because this is, of course, the big concern. He says, I'm more than nervous, he told Sky Sports. I'm pretty sure that everyone understands now what the effect is if there is a breach. And I totally agree that the focus on this will actually be very big. I think that is a point of attention mainly for the credibility and to check if everyone is respecting that rule. But it has to be done earlier rather than later. And Domenicali confirms that F1 is streamlining the budget cap systems to identify a team's budget trajectory, preventing it from spiraling. He says, we are discussing, and this is on the FIA side, to make sure that the control and certification will be done much earlier, because the effect, if some teams will be over it, has to be done in a proper way in as short a time as possible to be more credible. We see other sports that are tackling the financial regulation with, in my opinion, too long a time for reaction. This is not good. So yeah, lots of discussion coming with regards to that budget cap. And have teams overspent last season?
Well, yes. I mean, certainly we'll be looking at the likes of Aston Martin as well as Williams, who seem to be doing quite well. But you never know, they may have just made some good steps in the wind tunnel. But we'll have to find out in the next few months.
Indeed.
Another interesting article that I have just seen is that Carlos Sainz's future at Ferrari is reportedly under serious threat, with both his teammate Charles Leclerc and the team unhappy with his performance. The reports from Spanish media are a bleak look inside the life at Maranello, where the star of the Formula One, at the start of the Formula One 2023 season, which has been far from ideal at Ferrari. The Italian team is supposedly fed up with excuses from him. Last time out in Australia, Sainz was left raging at a 5-second penalty which took him from P4 to P14, and his appeal was dismissed by the FIA. Ferrari wants Sainz to win on track and not outside, and their attitude is making it clear that regrets or excuses are useless. I mean, that's harsh coming from Ferrari.
I'm not even sure if that necessarily is Ferrari, or whether or not that article is trying to create fuel out of nothing, because it's a bit of a rich one to say, oh no, he's making excuses in the car, because if it were just excuses in the car for him, why would Ferrari have gone through all the trouble of taking lawyers and taking a whole story to the FIA for a whole appeal for the incident? If it really wasn't showing support for Carlos Sainz, none of that would have happened.
Well, there's also been a lot of rumours in the last few weeks of Audi supposedly wanting to hire Carlos Sainz as one of their first drivers when they fully join the grid in 2026. I certainly think Audi would be a great seat for Carlos Sainz to be in. I mean, his father races for Audi in Dakar. I'm pretty sure he raced for them last year. So, I mean, it would be understandable to see Carlos Sainz Jr. in an Audi. But who else will be in that seat? That will be yet to be seen. Hopefully Mick Schumacher, maybe someone else, but I think it would be...
But I mean, so just go back to that Audi rejoining 2026. Do we know if it's confirmed that they're joining 100%. A separate team?
They're taking over Alfa Romeo.
Yeah, okay, perfect.
Yeah. So they start next year. I think they start adding their own branding onto the car. 2026, they completely take over the team. Rebranded as Audi, their own engine, everything.
Very keen to see that. And I think that'll be a very strong team as well. I reckon that'll be the Aston Martin in terms of a comeback story. But I think Audi will be a very popular team.
I think it might take them a year or two to get up to pace. It will. I mean, I might be surprised. You never know. But
it's too big a name.
It's such a difficult sport to just come in and hit the ground running. But at least they have the 2-year buffer from 2024 to 2026 to kind of get a feel for it. But yes, any other thoughts for you? I've obviously got my one last article.
Yeah, but I was just saying, I'm going on to that Audi thing, and just coming in 2026. I just think it's such a big name, Audi, of course. Not to take away from the likes of Williams and Alfa Romeo and AlphaTauri and all these things, but at the end of the day, when you're big German manufacturer, and you've got Mercedes already there, of course.
Yes.
Now Mercedes AMG is arguably one of the best Formula One teams of the last decade. If not the best Formula One team of the last decade. Now, they entered Formula One hitting the ground running. They really did. They obviously went out and got Schumacher into the team and just really trailblazed their way forward. I mean, the first season was a little bit mid-table-ish, and the following season they started fighting right at the top there. And I think you'll see a similar thing from Audi. I think their very first season as a fully independent
Mercedes took about 4 years to get competitive. They had Michael Schumacher who built that car up from them. And only once he left did they really start being a bit more competitive.
But they did win a few races in between that. That's my thing, is the fact that they managed to find pace relatively quickly. Consistent pace, no, but certainly something competitively. And I think Audi, will certainly know there's a lot more riding on them joining than necessarily Mercedes at the time. I think it's a much more popular sport. I think that the demands of being successful out of the box are even more so now.
And of course, they've got so much experience in different formulas in, of course, hypercars for World Endurance Championship. So I think they will have a lot of that technology that can be brought forward into Formula One. Any more thoughts on that?
I just really look forward to seeing Audi join. And going back to that article with regards to Carlos Sainz, I don't think his position's in that much endangerment as well, because you can also consider the fact that he's currently leading his teammate Charles Leclerc in the points table. It's
only because Charles Leclerc's had so much bad luck, unfortunately.
Hey, he's behind him. Only the scoreboard says anything. The scoreboard shows no excuses. For how long,
but yes. So just with my final article, I don't know if Mark has any more, I don't think so, but just the final one here for this evening. Felipe Massa has assembled a legal team to evaluate and look at possibly taking the Formula One or the FIA to court over the 2008 title. Felipe Massa has moved forward with plans to evaluate whether there are legal grounds for him to challenge the outcome of the 2008 Formula One World Championship. As revealed by Autosport earlier this month, Massa has been spurred into action by comments from former Formula One Supremo Bernie Ecclestone, suggesting that knowledge of the controversial Crashgate moment at the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix came early enough for action to be taken that season. Obviously, very interesting to see that he is trying to overturn a championship title. How many years later?
15 years later.
I mean, if this could happen, how many more people could we see trying to take legal action? Could we see Lewis Hamilton trying to take legal action over 2021? I mean, I don't think so, but...
I mean, I don't know. Felipe Massa, unfortunately for me, I'm a great racing driver, of course, but it does seem to just ooze that just pure... not negative energy, but it's very much, it looks like a sour person. It looks like he's permanently upset with life. And I think he is probably he's probably fed up with the fact that, he's not up there with the great names in terms of Formula One, which I think is harsh, because I think I put him up there as one of the bigger names in Formula One of the last 40 years. Not that Formula One's been going much longer than that, but I think he's there in his own right, and I think somehow maybe he feels like his name's not in as many lights as they should be. And I think perhaps he's trying to make use of the fact that Formula One has grown exponentially in the last couple of years due to Drive to Survive. Maybe he's thinking, I want my name in the record book so that more people notice me, and that maybe I can get a bit more of limelight than I've been getting.
Well, I mean, how many World Championships did he win?
I think he just won one for Ferrari, didn't he?
It was one, yes.
It was just one for Ferrari. Or perhaps it might have even been for... who's the other team he raced for? Was it not Sauber?
He raced for Williams, but I don't think he got a championship for them.
But I mean, of course, Massa raced for Ferrari for many years alongside Fernando Alonso. Fernando Alonso is still obviously racing and supposedly dating Taylor Swift. No, I doubt it.
No, he hasn't won a world championship.
So, yeah.
He's had 11 wins, 41 podiums, and 1,167 career points, but no world championships.
So maybe that's why he's getting so upset. He wants something behind us.
Yes. Going on to the article, continuing to read here, it just says, Massa said that Ecclestone's revelation about knowing of the Singapore Grand Prix events early enough for action to be taken was enough for him to think about if there were options to call for a legal review. Speaking to Autosport recently, he said, there are rules and there are many things that, depending on the country, you cannot go back after 15 years to resolve a situation. But I intend to study the situation, study what the laws say and the rules. We have to have an idea of what is possible to do. Autosport has learned that Massa has now pulled together a team of lawyers to evaluate the situation and work out definitively if there are any grounds to take the matter further.
So whether or not something actually happens as a result of that, of course, they're just going to do a bit of research with lawyers. They're going to go and see if they've got legal grounds to go ahead. But that still remains to be unseen as to whether they do go ahead. But if they do, that'll be a huge story.
So Article 1.3.1b of the ISC, which I assume is the International Sporting Code, states that competitors, in quotes, shall undertake to submit themselves without reserve to the above and to the decisions of the sporting authority and to the consequences resulting therefore. While in theory, Massa could seek out the views of the Court of Arbitration for the sport, it has no jurisdiction over the FIA on issues like this. The FIA statutes dictate that the CAS may only be involved in matters relating to the FIA's anti-doping disciplinary committee. So even if he does take them to court, they don't necessarily have any grounds to change the outcome of the World Championship.
But what they could do is they could challenge and at least lawfully admit a wrongful...
and conspiracy.
Well, yeah, it would at least say it's wrongful in terms of, well, they were found in the wrong, I suppose, of following procedure.
Yes.
And at least were incorrect in their policy. In which case, it would essentially say he did win that championship but didn't win it.
Yes.
I mean, it's a very difficult one to argue.
Especially when you argue it 15 years later. If he had challenged it at the end of that season, sure, I would completely understand it. But to come now 15 years later, I mean, it just feels a little bit opportunistic.
Yeah, as I say, I don't see anything coming of it, but nonetheless, something, of course, interesting to talk about. But that was our Forever Motorsports weekly show on our Monday, and of course, be sure to check out the channel. Every Monday, we do go and do the live show, and we will be doing, well, racing to this evening, actually, in preparation for Thursday. I think we're going to upload on Thursday, perhaps, maybe not, but we will have the Baku Grand Prix for you guys, so you can watch the entire Forever Sports team racing along in the Baku circuit.
Yes.
Damn difficult circuit. But we
Also,
will. Yeah, sorry.
Also looking forward to, of course, having everyone alongside us for all of our streams this weekend. Practice 1, 2, and 3, as well as the sprint race, qualifying, and the race on Sunday. We will be joining you for the sprint race as well as
The Grand Prix,
hopefully.
Hopefully.
We should have either some other
Presenters, yes.
other presenters up for the other sessions. If not, then we will have that timing up for you as well as a live tracker.
Now, indeed, as I say, we might see some new faces on the channel. They're doing some commentary for Formula One, but nonetheless, everyone as a Formula One fan and the Forever Sports team will be with you, as we hope. We hold fingers that we will be with you, and that Formula One do not decide to take down our streams illegitimately. But nonetheless, hopefully we'll be with you this weekend. So guys, thank you so much for watching the weekly show. Reese has been Reese. I have been me, Mark. And thank you for watching Forever Motorsports on Forever Sports. Be sure to subscribe, like the video,